The UN flag in front of the ICTY building in The Hague flies at half-mast this week, and the book of condolence has been opened in the tribunal's lobby to mark the passing of Judge Antonio Nino Cassese, international criminal law professor, the first president of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia from 1993 until 1997, and until recently the president of the Special Tribunal for Lebanon. Judge Cassese died last weekend in his home in Florence.
When I heard that, first of all, I heard that Nino had resigned resigned his presidency at the Lebanon Tribunal because of illness, and then, of course, heard that he had passed. My first reaction was just, what a loss, Mirko. What a loss. You know, he had so many more contributions to make, and it's just a shame. We just have been robbed, so to speak, from robbed of his contributions. But when we first met in the tribunal, I guess I was impressed with his energy and his enthusiasm. Of course, his knowledge of international humanitarian law, because he truly was a scholar. I got to know him over the 2 months or so that we worked to draft the rules. His enthusiasm was infectious.
When I came here, I was hoping that the tribunal would start operating right away, but I realized that actually we had nothing, zero. You may remember we had no budget, no headquarters, no place where to meet and to work. We were sworn in on the 17th of November. In early December, we decided to go back home. I said, no, you go back home. I must remain here. I will go just for the Christmas holidays, but I will start working at least on the rules of procedure and evidence. Let us do something. And this is what I did. I went home and I worked even on Christmas Day, 6 hours only, on the rules of procedure and evidence.
Although Nino was a contemporary of mine in the field of international criminal law, and we worked closely together on the law journal he founded, the Oxford Journal of International Criminal Justice, actually he has been my mentor and role model. He's the man who awakened the international criminal law that had long been dormant since the Nuremberg Tribunal. And without him, we cannot think of how the various international tribunals of today would have been established.
As you may know, not only I knew him from ICTY and ICTR, where he was also involved in the appellate work when I was the prosecutor for both, but also subsequently when I was the High Commissioner for Human Rights. He led the commission of inquiry into the events in Darfur that my office supported. So I worked, in a sense, closely with him during that period as well. And then we barely saw each other afterwards. And now I feel such a loss that I had not managed to see more of him in recent years.
You know, he came to the tribunal with the belief, or the fear, I suppose, that we would not have trials. Well, maybe I shouldn't speak for him, I'll speak for myself. Many of us feel that we would not have trials, that there was an absence of will on the part of the international community, on the part of the United Nations. So he, at the first meeting, was advocating that we have trials in absentia. I was vigorously opposed to that. And I got to know him, I think, as a result of our clashes, disagreements over that issue. He held tight, and this was after we elected him president, but he was willing to listen to views and patient, but he was a tough advocate. And I equally believed that we should not have trials in absentia. I was equally vigorous, I suppose. And in the end, we compromised, and we adopted, all of this you probably know, adopted Rule 61. And I have a photo of the two of us shaking hands when we reached that agreement. He had kind of a twinkle in his eyes. It was the enthusiasm that came through.
You know that the famous expression by an famous Italian writer and politician, Gramsci, who spoke of the need of the optimism of the heart and the pessimism of the mind. So I thought I should be, I knew coldly, if I could think in a cold way, I knew that we had no chance of succeeding. But I thought that we should show a lot of enthusiasm and at least work, do whatever we could.
He was such a tremendous jurist, but he had not been a judge. Hence, this was, I think, is what led to some of our early and numerous, very interesting battles. And some of them were actual battles, because I came from not only from having been a judge myself, both a trial judge and appellate court judge, but also from a common law system where the separation of the prosecution and the defense, of course, and the bench is very, very profound. And this was very foreign to Nino as a legal procedural concept. So we had, I think it's fair to say, tremendous battles. And when we saw each other over the years afterwards, despite the fact that at the time these were very tense issues, we both remember them with great fondness, that I think because we really profoundly respected each other, and I certainly had tremendous affection for him. But it was very clear, not at the beginning, but as our relationship developed, that we were intellectually and in a sense politically, from a legal perspective, we came from completely opposite world.
When Arbour came, we had already cases, and therefore she was right in saying, look, you judges, you take care of cases, and you can't interfere with me, with my cases, because we had cases, and also because her strategy, her prosecutorial strategy, was much better in the view of the judges. Namely, from the outset, she said, I will drop many cases against minor indictees, people who are second-rate people, I mean, soldiers or guards of detention camps, and so these are cases which should go sooner or later to national tribunals, not cases for an international tribunal. I will concentrate on the leaders. So we were very happy. So there was no reason for us to interfere with their strategy. And secondly, we had cases. So therefore, the sort of separation she pushed for between judges, the judiciary, let's say, and the prosecutor's office was accepted by everybody and was in the best interest of the tribunal.
I remember when I became president, and he was president for 2 terms, he really didn't want a second term, or at least that's what he said. But no one else was, I guess, willing at that time to pick up the mantle. And so he served a second term, and then I became president after him. And I remember that he implored me to appoint him to the trial chamber. I said, Nino, you're a scholar, you're perfect on the appeals chamber. What do you want to be a trial chamber judge for? That has not been your past, in the courtrooms, that sort of thing. But he was so enthusiastic about it. He really wanted to get into the mix, so to speak. And I did appoint him to the trial chamber, along with Judge Hunt, who was a very strong trial judge, and Judge Mumba, who had been a trial judge before. So he just was not satisfied. He was never satisfied. I guess that's maybe the way to put it. I'm just thinking about it now. He wasn't satisfied with having crossed one vista, accomplished something that was tremendously important and contributed to the body of law. He wanted to try something new and different, and he did.
I remember, Judge May, I mean, he's typical British. He can control, he has a lot of self-control. And I remember in Kupreskic, once, I saw tears on his face. I mean, even May, I mean, to me it was so horrible because I had controlled myself. I could not allow, as a presiding judge, to cry in court, because if you see some witnesses, and they were credible. I mean, because of course, if they are not credible, you don't share the emotions. But if you share the emotions, you can't help crying. Now, a judge is not expected to cry in court. And there were, at least on one occasion, not only me and Mumba, weak people. I mean, Mumba and I, we are probably weak, fragile psychologically. But May, who is very strong, had tears on his cheeks. So that means that it is devastating, because of course you can't help sharing what they tell you, the feelings.
When I started these secret indictments, you know, the sealed indictments, of course the judges had to know about it because we had to get permission from the court to keep these indictments secret. I was so worried that Nino wouldn't be able to keep the secret because he was so passionate. And he felt at that time when I came, this was the biggest issue. We had so few people in custody, very few prospects for arrest. It was a kind of logjam in the system. And when I came up with this idea, and we started developing it, and we got some cases, it was critical that it remained very confidential. And yet Nino was so enthusiastic about it, I thought, oh, he's going to go and tell everyone that we've got a formula. But of course he didn't.
Yeah, as a person, he's such a sweet, amicable, and humble man. In conclusion, his leadership and thought-provoking work will be sorely missed in our field, and it is for future scholars and practitioners to attempt to fill his big shoe he left behind.
With Louise Arbour, we had a lot of disagreements, but very candid, very frank, and between what I think two competent people, because there were disagreements, but we fought we disagreed, but we enjoyed disagreeing, you know, our disagreement, because we felt that we were, you know, both professionals interested in a good tribunal, in making the tribunal better and better.
He was very modest in referring to himself as a merely competent person. He was much more than competent. Frankly, I think in the entire history of ICTY, he will dominate as a legal giant. I mean, his intellect was formidable, his legal knowledge was unique, his passion, devotion, work ethics, he was really in a class by himself.